Hello everyone, it's Gigabeef here, and today we're looking at the implications of some recent testing done by Veritas on the fragmentation mechanic. If you haven't seen his video already, then do go check it out, I'll put a link in the description. In short, fragmentation is a mechanic that works generally like a critical hit that provides an extra 50% damage when it procs. Each round has a fragmentation chance that is listed on the wiki, but there is an exception that complicates it a little bit, which is that for rounds under 20 penetration, fragmentation no longer works, regardless of what it says in the frag chance stat. It may as well be 0 for these. This bug has been in the game for a very long time. But for the rest of the ammo with over 20 pen, we should expect to see fragmentation aligned with the percentage chances on the wiki. The recent testing, however, showed that fragmentation only seems to occur on arm and leg hitboxes at the moment, never on thorax and stomach. This is a new discovery. Now, given that fragmentation is an RNG style mechanic, we can't rely on it, but it can be an important factor when choosing ammo, as I recently discussed in my SVD guide. This is a good example because no cartridge in the 7.62x54R caliber can one-shot to the thorax, but LPS and T46M should be able to sometimes, about once every 5th shot, simply because their frag chance is roughly 20%. If this is in fact not the case though, then we may as well go for rounds with higher penetration and armor damage percentage to beat armor quicker, given the one upside that we were looking for doesn't actually help on the hitbox where it matters most. These kinds of small differences can have a massive impact in EFT because when we break down the game into the underlying calculations, breakpoints become very important. For example, whether a round 1 shots the thorax versus 2 shots makes a big difference. In this way, going from 90 damage to 84 damage for example is much more impactful than 70 to 65. 70 damage is a 2-shot kill, just like 65 is, so the extra 5 damage difference isn't that big of a deal. In this way, we don't really care what the damage is really, just whether it meets the criteria of 1-shot, 2-shot, 3-shot, etc. The rounds that I wanted to focus on are those that in theory benefit most from their fragmentation chance to boost their effectiveness and are used regularly, namely the T46M for the SVD and then M856A1 and M855A1 for the 5.56 caliber. Both T46 and LPS rounds have an 18% frag chance in theory, which if this was working properly would, as I said, allow you to one-shot players around every 5th bullet, and because of their penetration values of 41 and 42 should be very effective against class 4 armor. Within the 5.56 testing, these are most interesting because they have some of the highest fragmentation chances across all rounds with greater than 30 pen that are used widely, at around 1/3 chance each. Again here, this makes a huge difference. The boost in damage means that these bullets would be able to snag 2-shot kills even through armor. With the help from Homeless Alien in my Discord, we repeated Veritas' testing to check that this was actually the case for the thorax specifically in offline co-op. Indeed, we got to the same results that neither T46M, M856A1 or M855A1 ever fragment on the thorax hitbox. Here we used 20 rounds of T46 and 30 rounds each of 5.6A1 and 5.5A1, so the statistical likelihood of not getting a fragment is incredibly small. With this result, we took to a real live raid, and this time we left the SVD at home. The idea being that if we could show that 5.56 rounds still don't fragment in a real raid, then the co-op results almost certainly apply for all the rounds that were tested in offline as well. The reason this is important is that the build version of the game that is active for local offline, co-op offline on the BSG servers, and actual live Tarkov raids is not always identical. When I was doing some previous testing for example, we noticed that for instance the raid timers were shorter on co-op offline than on regular raids, and were in fact the old shorter timers that got put in near the start of the 12-12-30 wipe. Although this had already been reverted on the actual live servers, co-op offline still had the old shorter timers, the implication being that the build or the settings or something was not the same between actual live and co-op, hence we have to be careful when we translate the results between them. That said, again we saw no fragments whatsoever on the thorax hitbox across 15 rounds of M856A1 and 15 rounds of M855A1, which pretty much seals the deal. One other thing that I did want to check out was with scavs. This is hard to test because it's not that easy to get PMCs and scavs into the same raid, but when I was doing my Punisher 6 video, I'm pretty sure that I had some thorax 1-taps on these guys. In regular solo offline, we can definitely see that this occurs. I tried it a few times on my own and once on stream as well to demonstrate the point, so it seems like the bug is just against PMCs. So what actually are the ramifications of this? Well, of the rounds where fragmentation is a big deal, 5.56 probably gets hurt the most, as the situations where you can get a 2-shot kill are diminished greatly. Typically, you can assume that class 4 armor will reduce damage by about 20% against M856A1 and about 15% against M855A1. 2 shots from 56A1 comes to 108 damage raw at point blank, and reduced by 20% gets to 86.4, which really doesn't leave much room for damage drop off over distance. About 20 meters should do it. This would then result in a 3-shot kill most of the time, because the fragmentation chance of 1/3 isn't actually active for the Thorax hitbox. 2 shots from 55A1 deals 98 damage, which only requires armor to provide 14% damage mitigation to not kill anymore, due to the total dropping below the 85 Thorax HP threshold as well. Again, this has to be from super close range too, otherwise the damage drop off makes this even worse. I have actual testing data for 55A1 against a trooper from when I did my Tasmanian Tiger SK rig video, and the first 2 penetrating shots dealt 41 and then 43. The second number is slightly higher because the armor was damaged a bit after shot 1, but this only comes to 84 total, so it's already practically impossible even at 0 meters. Add the damage drop off back into the equation and we're pretty much certain to get a 3-shot kill with 55A1 through class 4 or better. Now, as much as breakpoints are important, I don't think this is a killer for 5.56, this just dampens our expectations a little bit compared to where we hoped it would be. The extra damage on these 2 rounds is still quite a bit higher than on their 5.45 counterparts, and with arm and leg shots still able to deal fragmentation damage, this does help when you're in a full spray situation. I'll stick up a table that I made showing all the rounds above 30 penetration that have a fragmentation chance over 15, so you can take a look at which ones you might use in your own raids. I know that I said that the fragmentation threshold is 20, but around this 20 mark we don't really care anyway because you're not going to pen class 4 armor. Another couple of notable mentions here is M995 for 5.56, which would really like the extra damage from fragments to get 2-shot thoraxes sometimes, especially as it penetrates chest armor so nicely. Also, 300 blackout AP is diminished a little bit as well, because this can be thought of just as a better version of M855A1, at least in the stats. 7.62 PS is affected as it has a decent 25% chance to fragment, as well as 20% on both the FMJ and the subsonic rounds for the MP7, as well as the SS190 and the SB193 rounds for the P90. There are a few in a similar category to T46M and LPS as well, but the standout one is M80 within the 7.62x51 NATO caliber with a 17% chance. Again, this is a shame because it does enough damage to kill in one shot if a fragment procs, but never if you cannot get one. One really unfortunate outcome of this is that it makes 7.62 BP and 45 AP relatively more attractive, which are 2 rounds that didn't need more incentives for people to use them. BP's 12% chance is too low to have a massive effect, and it 2 shots on penetrations anyway because the damage is so high. 45 AP's frag chance is tiny at 1%, and so it relies solely on its base damage, but at 70, this is actually incredible anyway, so it's no big deal. Also, you may notice when browsing the ballistics chart that none of the multi-pellet cartridges for shotguns have any fragmentation chance at all. This means that Flechette is also totally unaffected by this, one that I use a bunch and is really strong at close range. If you're interested in what makes Flechette so powerful and how different armors hold up against it, go and check out this video here. Otherwise, a big shout out to all my patrons, hit all the buttons, and if you enjoyed the video, as always, have fun in your raids.